And this is Rick Osmond here on the Oopa Loopa Cafe, and joined, very privileged to be joined, I think, by Cindy Cashdollar. And Cindy, you have an album out on CD now entitled Slideshow. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, Slideshow came about because I had never done a CD before and wanted to show all the different styles and different sounds of both the steel and slide guitar. So I got a lot of various artists on there, not necessarily all slide players, to come and guest on it, and it took quite a while to do because of that. I waited for people to either be traveling through Austin, Texas, or when their schedule permitted them to get here. But it was really a lot of fun to do. I've got duets with Sonny Landreth, the great Mike Aldridge on dobro, who unfortunately passed away just last month. Herb Remington, who is still around and has more energy than anybody I know. He played steel guitar for Bob Wilson, the Texas Playboys. I've got Marsha Ball, a wonderful piano player, doing vocals on there. Johnny Nicholas, who's a great local blues artist. So, and my brother.
I second that part about the great local blues artist. I listened to the samples earlier. I'm impressed.
It was there was no shortage of people to choose from. It was very difficult actually to decide who to have on there, and my brother Russ Cashdollar played drums on one track. So and there's many more guests. Jorma Kalkinen, who your listeners might know, of course, from Jefferson Airplane, and also Hot Tuna. We were doing a beautiful instrumental that he wrote. So it crosses, there's quite a cross-section on there of material.
Yeah, there is. And it's all good stuff. I actually, the last one, pardon me, the last one in your samples list, I would have to describe as gentle but haunting, Locust Grove.
Oh, thank you. I wrote Locust Grove quite a few years ago, actually. Locust Grove was the name of my grandparents' dairy farm outside of Woodstock, New York. And I had moved away from the Woodstock area out of state and came back to visit, and happened to drive by where the dairy used to be, and hadn't seen it for some time, and hadn't realized that a lot of the barns and buildings had collapsed. And so it was very sad. And so I just, pulled over to the side of the road, and the melody came to me just within seconds. And
funny how that works, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. And then that's a lot of people like that track. And it seems to be very emotional for some people, and especially for my friends that are still back home. When they heard it, they said it made them cry. So because they were, of course, very familiar with the area, and we spent a lot of time playing around the barns, and so I guess that's a compliment. You don't want to make people sad or cry to that extent, but I guess that's a sign of a good song when it stirs up emotions in people.
I think that is the goal of all creative things, is to share an emotion. Now, speaking of sharing, you've shared stages with a lot of folks, and probably some of them were challenging just because of the name value. But what was the one that was there one that actually made you nervous?
Oh, I don't think. I'm trying to think. Sometimes I can't really decide if it's a case of nerve or it's just a lot of excited energy. I mean, there's situations where I think I felt more nervous maybe playing in a very tiny venue where people are sitting right there, you know, almost at your feet, more than maybe a huge stadium or something. But, you know, there's certainly artists I was very excited to work with. Bob Dylan was one on, you know, I did the Time Out of Mind recording with him. Dan Morrison. And even, you know, Asleep at the Wheel, actually, when I first joined that band, that made me more nervous, I think, than a lot of the people I work with, only because I was very new to the steel guitar. I had played the dobro for years, and then took up steel as kind of a hobby. And, you know, it's a bit of a different animal. There's more strings, there's totally different tunings, different bar, slide bar that you work with. And so not only was I trying to join this band that was a large band with very educated amazing players in it, but I was also trying to do a genre of music I wasn't really that well versed in, on an instrument I wasn't familiar with, and moving to Texas, which, you know, was so different.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of nerves going on there at that time.
Well, speaking of Texas, you're appearing on a fairly regular basis there in Austin at a couple of different venues, but one of them is primary.
Oh, the Saxon Pub?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great local venue that has been kind of an Austin institution for years. I mean, I've been here 20 years, and it was here long before that. And they get a great crowd, and I'm usually there if I'm in town on every Wednesday night from 6 to 8 with Johnny Nicholas, who I mentioned earlier is a great blues artist, and he's a great songwriter, and the band is called Johnny Nicholas and Hellbent. And so we have a great time there every Wednesday from 6 to 8, and everybody can scatter and go on to another gig. Is what usually happens around here in Austin, because, you know, it's a big music town with a lot of clubs.
Yeah. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the World Armadillo headquarters, is it still open or still there at all?
Oh, long gone.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, that was an era that I badly missed. I moved to Austin in 1992. So I miss the Armadillo days, and, you know, hear a lot of great things about it, and of course it's in tons of books. But, you know, it's still, Austin is still so much, you know, Nashville is much more, I think, of a business-oriented music town, although there are live venues there. But I think Austin is definitely more of a live venue town. There's a lot of different kinds of clubs where you hear many different types of music 7 nights a week.
Yep. Yeah, speaking of Nashville and venues, I remember when Printer's Alley was going full hop 24 hours a day, but that's kind of fallen off too. Now, do you have plans for any more albums coming up?
I would love to do another one. I have the list of songs I'd like to do. I have the list of guest artists. I would love. I had so much fun making Slideshow, and got so much positive feedback on the variety of material on there. I would like to do another one. Maybe the only difference being have more guest vocal artists. But as you know, it's hard to get a record label, and it's difficult to get a budget together for such an endeavor. So I really don't want to do any raising money. I know a lot of people are having a lot of success raising money on the internet, but I just don't want to get to that point yet. I want to see if I can somehow raise money another way. But I would
selling
love
your
to
current
do
album would be preferable, I think. But few
Pardon me?
few 100,000 copies of Slideshow out the door would be great.
Yeah, and then there's Slideshow too. I'd love to have the same for that. Slideshow is still getting orders from a distribution company, and of course
Excellent.
it's available on Amazon and, you know, all the usual places. So it's still moving, you know.
So, how many stringed instruments do you own?
More than I should, but I use them all. I'm not a collector, you know. it might look that way, but that I actually use every one of the instruments I have, and I like a variety, especially for the various recording sessions that I do. But I would say about 25.
You're ahead of me by a factor of about, I don't know, 4 or so.
But it's like, I guess you can't have too many guitars. Maybe you can, I don't know.
Well, only if their only function is to gather dust, then you have too many guitars. But if you're using them, there's no such thing as too many.
Thank you for validating that.
Now, I play badly, but I play, and I've got to say I admire your flexibility on the number of genres you can actually hang with. Because I can play country and a little bit of rock, but it doesn't matter what people throw at you, you go along with it.
Yeah, I think, if you enjoy a variety of styles, it's great to be able to adapt or play most any genre of music. And that's why you and I probably have so many guitars. But, I grew up in Woodstock, New York, and was exposed to a variety of different kinds of music at a very young age. I started going out to hear live music when I was, I think, around 11 or 12 years old. I remember seeing Van Morrison in concert back then. So, I envy people that have always stuck to one style, and yet I'm glad that I didn't, if that makes any sense.
It does to me, because once you get stuck in a genre, well, you're stuck in a genre. If you're going to be a musician, which I'm not and you are, you have to be able to pick up the instrument and play to anything, I think.
Yeah, and I think that steel guitar and as well as dobro, which of course is being called resophonic guitar these days, I think those instruments used to be pigeonholed just for country music and bluegrass and western swing, but obviously no more. I mean, there's so many different applications, and people like Robert Randolph have done great new things with the pedal steel guitar, and they're just very, they can be almost just used for atmospheric sounds sometimes. But certainly, I think there's such a cross-section of music now that, the same goes for instruments as well.
Yep. Now, you mentioned the farm, the dairy farm, Locust Grove, and you mentioned that you grew up in Woodstock, which I know is a very musical area. But was your family musical as well?
My grandmother on my mom's side played piano. And I think she was still in her late 60s. She was in a big band. And then my dad played trumpet, but it wasn't a musical household where there were, live music going on. But I can remember my grandmother trying to give me piano lessons, and that didn't obviously work out too well. But my dad used to like to listen to country music on the radio all the time, and my mom had a very extensive record collection of jazz and what is being called world beat music now. She was way ahead of her time. So I got exposed to a lot of music like that too.
Well, that's a good thing.
And as I mentioned before, my brother Russ Cashdollar plays drums. So, the DNA strands are in there somewhere. Well,
I got some of that, but some of the strands had broken threads, I think. Anyway, we're actually, as much fun as this is, we're actually down to just a few seconds left in this. Cindy, I want to say thank you, and that folks can go to cindycashdollar.com and buy the album right there, or look at photos, read your bio, etc. And if you ever get in Southern Indiana, you have my number.
I would love to. I haven't been there in a while, and there's some beautiful areas out there. I know where you are. And so thank you for that invitation. I would like to take you up on that.
All right. We'll certainly keep the invitation open, and if you get in the neighborhood,
Okay.
give me a ring.
You got it. Thank you so much for having me on your show.